Hello, I'm Janessa. I'm a coach and business consultant, and I enjoy doing. Let's try that again. And I enjoy doing getting ready with me, get ready with me videos where I talk about topics related to life and or business while doing my makeup and my skincare. So let's get into it. Today's topic is a big one. I'm actually recording this a couple days into the new year 2025, and I want to talk about New Year's resolutions, why they don't work, maybe some other strategies we can use or approaches and perspectives that might be helpful so you can try them on for yourself and see what works for you. And with that, I've already done my skincare, so I think we are going to start with some foundation. I'm going to do the Armani Luminous Silk Foundation. If I can get my brush, my handy dandy foundation brush, let's just get into it. So as I put on a little bit of foundation, I want to talk about the many reasons why New Year's resolutions don't tend to work. I have certainly fallen into the camp, though, where I would think that I could just have a little bit more resolve, right? A little bit more motivation, a little bit more self-control. And I thought that if I just worked a little harder, focused a little bit more, that my New Year's resolutions would stick. And honestly, I was trying to think the other day if I can recall any year where my New Year's resolutions really stuck. And I'll have to say that my New Year's resolutions stuck, but we're not in some sort of cycle of obsession or addiction. Because yeah, obsession and addiction can definitely make it a little more possible for certain resolutions to stick. But I wouldn't say that they're supportive of our long-term health. By the way, my mirror's down here if you see me keep looking down here. Oh, and I should probably turn it on. That would help too. What I want to talk about today is not just, like I said, why they don't work, but also what can work. Because I do have some experience with that too, thankfully. The nice thing about New Year's resolutions is they do feel like a decision. It is a decision point. I'm resolving to do something. But what is challenging is decisions are not actions. Decisions need to be followed up with actions. So we can spend all this energy and this time thinking about how we want to get to the point where we've fully committed and we've decided in our minds that this is happening now. And even that can feel like a big process. Even that can take a lot of resolve in and of itself. And then we finally get to that point. But if we don't have a plan, if we don't have practice with follow through, it's almost like I liken it to physical training just because that's part of my background. You know, it takes time to build muscle and muscle memory and have the experience under our belt where we know, okay, this is just what I need to do to get the thing done. And so often we pick goals or resolutions that we've never experienced before, and we have no idea what actually goes into creating that reality for ourselves. So in addition to just making a decision, but not having clarity around the action, we also may misunderstand the amount of effort required to make that shift in our lives. Another reason why resolutions may fail or not work is because we're still connected to a more superficial reason for why we want to make this change. Often I find, and I've been through this a lot in my life, where if I've set a goal or resolution that's based on some sort of external expectation or standard or result that I think is going to change the way that people think about me, the way people look at me, the way they perceive what I do in the world, or the value that I create, that can be a recipe for lackluster results and sustainability over time, because I'm not getting in touch with that internal locus of control. I'm not getting in touch with that deeper why. So often I think we need to excavate a little bit more into a deeper reason and get past what's superficial. Not that superficial things don't work or aren't valuable. I mean, for example, let's say you want to get in shape for a particular event in your life. That's not a bad reason. It just may not be enough. There may be a need for something that's going to drive you a little bit deeper, because once you do get into the action steps beyond the decision and you're in the midst of the change and you're trying to make it work in your daily life, challenges are bound to come up. That's just what happens. And so what's going to give you the juice, the energy to get through those challenging moments? So often I also think a reason why resolutions, and even if we expand it, not just resolutions, that's just what I'm using because it's that time of year right now, but any sort of goal, if we're picking something that is so distinctly different from our normal daily experience, like our current state, like the gap between where we want to go and where we are is just huge, that's going to require a lot more time. That's going to require a lot more energy. And it's going to require more learning because it's just that different from where we are right now. And a process of change and transformation requires learning. You have to learn how to be different, how to do different, how to show up differently in your life. And if we're not really honest with ourselves about where we actually are, sometimes that gap between where we are and where we want to go is even bigger than we think it is. I'm going to put on these concealers and I'll give you an example of that to illustrate that point. I'm going to use my handy dandy little concealer brush that I love and just blend this out and talk through this example. Well, let's use a common example, right? Which so often shows up with New Year's resolutions this time of year, which is doing some sort of body transformation or health transformation. We need to be honest with ourselves about our current state around that before really diving into coming up with some sort of plan that's going to get us somewhere so we can experience something different. And I don't want to diminish these New Year's resolutions about things like, oh my God, hair in my face. Things like, it's still there. Okay, I think it's gone. Things like losing weight, like that's a good goal to have for some people. If that's what you want, like don't let anybody and their value system change what you know is true for you if that's something you really want. If, for example, you know that losing weight in a healthy way for you is, let's say, eating healthier food options, however you define that for yourself. It can be helpful to ask, well, what are your current habits around food? And being really honest about it. Because if you think that the way that you eat is actually pretty healthy, but then you actually go through a process of doing a food journal and writing down all the foods you eat and the amounts and noticing, oh, wow, like the reality is actually different than my perception of myself and my current state. That's so helpful because you can then adjust the goal that you have or just have an understanding that maybe that gap between where you are and where you want to go is actually bigger than what you thought. So build in some more time, build in some more support. Maybe it's working with a coach or finding support groups or whatever that looks like for you. Just know that the means have to actually fit not just where you're going, but reflect where you're truly starting. The last piece I want to touch on, which is really important around why resolutions fail, before we get into the fun part, which is like, okay, so how do we actually make change that sticks, that's sustainable, that's going to have some sort of staying power in our lives? So often, one of the challenges we have is we choose action steps that are way, way too big for what our current capacity and learning is. What I mean by that is, let's still take the example of wanting to lose weight. And if you're going from eating a healthy diet, I'll make it up, half of the time, 50% of the time, and you want to go closer to 80, 90% of the time, you're eating healthy foods that fuel you, that help you feel good and support your weight loss goals. And you decide that the first week you're going to revamp your entire diet. You're going to change your plans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and your snacks. It's like a complete overhaul. That is a huge step. And maybe you'll be able to do it for a few days, for a week, for a couple weeks. But we all know the statistics that within 2-3 weeks, sometimes even less than that, people have fallen off the bandwagon when it comes to their goals and what they're trying to do and change in their lives. And that doesn't make you wrong. That actually just is a reflection of the fact that you're human. And change requires learning. It requires not only shifting your behaviors, but often also shifting your sense of identity and who you are. And that's okay. So let's work with that. Like, let's take the bigger goals, the bigger steps, and break them down into maybe even sub goals or milestones, or however you want to think about it. And then for each sub goal or for each milestone, we're already getting into the next part, which is like, how do we make this sustainable? Let's just go there, because this one about taking big actions and cutting them down into small pieces, I think is one of the most powerful things we can do to actually create change and transformation in our lives. I would encourage you to do this as an example. Think of a goal that you want. Maybe it is your current New Year's resolution if you're watching this right now in January. Come up with the first action step you want to take. And then I strongly encourage you to take that action, whatever it is, and cut it down in half into something much smaller. And then do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And keep cutting that action into smaller and smaller actions until it's almost like, Janessa, this is so duh. Like, this is so easy. This is too easy. Often when those thoughts come up in our minds that it should be harder than this, that's actually a really great place to start, because that is the place where you're going to be able to like knock it out and be consistent way more often than not. And when building up a change in our lives, we have to build up, like I said, that muscle memory, having that capacity, that learning, building the skills. But I want to add to that there's a confidence piece to all of this. Every action you take that you then successfully complete and consistently complete over time, you're building up your sense of self-worth, your confidence, your trust in your own abilities and what you can achieve and what you can create. And that muscle memory, that ability to say, I can trust myself to do this thing and follow through, is worth way more than achieving any specific action step, right? Because then you can take that confidence, that competence with building skills and making change and apply it to pretty much any part of your life. Of course, anytime we undergo a new transformation or journey, there are going to be new things we have to learn. It's not like it just all becomes easy at that point. I wish it did, but no, it doesn't. But it's almost like that, what's that analogy? Like teach someone to fish rather than give them fish, right? I'm butchering it, but you get the point, I think. Do the almost stupid small tasks and do that consistently. And as you build confidence, then start to take on bigger tasks. And then maybe you will be able to build momentum and move a little faster towards your goal. Okay, I totally got way too excited about that and have not set my under eyes. So let's do that real quick. And then I do want to get into, oh, that's a lot of powder. Woo! But I do want to get into that last point that I said around time and giving ourselves time. It is so much better to give yourself more time to do a change, to create something different in your life than not, because there are going to be many things that you don't anticipate that will come up as part of this transformation, change, and process. And rather than being in a place where you're like, I must do this goal by X date for whatever potentially arbitrary reason, if you start with something that is spacious, that is going to translate into how you think about yourself, how you show up, how you take care of yourself and your body through this transformation and this journey. So give yourself plenty of time, take the pressure off. And I even want to I want to edit myself there. It's not necessarily to take the pressure off, because maybe for you need a little bit of pressure. maybe for you need a little bit of something nipping at your heels in order to motivate you, and that's helpful. So I don't want to disregard that. It's more you need to tap into your own body sense and awareness and understand for yourself what are the signs that say, oh, I'm actually feeling okay, even though there's a little bit of stress. We all know that a little bit of sympathetic nervous system activation can help us learn what's my just enough of that versus what starts to show up in my body, in my behavior, in my life when I've gone a little too far. So I do want to edit that a little bit. It's not necessarily taking the pressure off. It's maybe finding the right amount of pressure for you in this particular situation and with this specific goal. And there's another activity that that I want to, exercise I want to give you that I've used a lot, and it's about imagining your future self and what your future self does. But first I gotta do my bronzer and my blush. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna come back and we're gonna chit chat about it. Okay, so that's my favorite blush that I've had recently or experimented with recently, which is the Westman Atelier Petal Blush. I use it a lot. This bronzer, I'm not a huge fan of. I was influenced to buy it. It's the LYS No Limits bronzer, and I have it in the shade Hope. But anyway, that's enough about bronzer and blush. Let's get into the exercise, which is how to use the help of your future self to identify maybe what is a more refined goal or resolution that's actually more true and aligned with what you want and what you value, and also to help identify what are the specific milestones or action steps that you can take. And I would even add to that, beyond just the nitty-gritty details of a plan or a strategy about how to get from where you are to where you want to go, it's really identifying that feeling state that's associated with the part of you, the future part of you, let's say, who's already at that goal, who already experiences that aspect of life that you're so yearning to create for yourself. And the way that you can get in touch with your future self is through a variety of ways. I mean, I really like writing. I use journaling a lot. I do a lot of journaling and journal prompts in my courses as well. I find that writing can just help access a different part of me, especially if it's a little bit more stream of consciousness. And it's just asking questions like, what does my future self want me to know about this goal or this resolution? What does my future self feel in that moment? How does she feel? What does she think? What does she see? What does she interact with? How did she get to that point? What advice does she have for me with where I am now? What's the most important thing that she wants me to know about this journey and this process? You can frame up a lot of different questions, but journaling them out is something that you can do. If you're a very visual person, going into, I guess you could say, a little bit more of like a calm meditative state, eyes closed or open, having just a moment to see what comes up visually when you think about those questions or ask yourself those questions. You can also do a vision board or identifying things that you encounter that are inspirational for you, and tap into the energy associated with that image that you want to include on your vision board, or you're just out and about in your life and you see something that is motivating for you. Ask yourself, what does that reflect about my future self and where I'm going? Why is that important to me? And in those moments when you do feel discouraged or you feel unmotivated, these can be helpful exercises too, to try, just to see, can you create a little bit of a shift internally? The last couple of tips that I want to offer as I put on mascara are kind of like mini tips. I think that they're helpful, but they're not necessarily gonna be make it or break it. And one of those, I hesitate to say this because I feel like I should say that external support is critical and you need to make sure that you have the right support system in place. And yes, having the right support system can be incredibly helpful. And at the end of the day, not everybody is going to be able to find themselves in a completely supportive environment. So yes, look for support, ask for support, identify where you could use a little bit more help. And know that you can trust yourself and you can do what you need to do. You can influence what you can control to create change. I don't think that it's helpful necessarily to create a dependency, is what I'm trying to say, on having the right support system. Because if that feels disempowering, if you feel like you need to be in a different location and a different environment in order to have the kind of support you need in order to create this goal, that's a dependency that might actually inhibit your ability to take actions every day, imperfect actions in an imperfect environment with imperfect support. We're not looking for perfection here. That's one thing I want to say. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for consistency. We're looking for sustainability. We're looking for what is really, truly something you value at a deeper level. Getting in touch with the imaginative and creative part of you, the curious part of you. because we need a little bit of stress, sometimes to help us learn to really lock in something that we're developing skill-wise. But we also want to be able to activate and access that part of us that's curious, that's playful. It's that mix of energies, I think, coming in and out of those states, which can actually help create change over time. And the other piece that I wanted to throw out there is the importance of periodically checking in with yourself to make sure it's still the right goal. And I say that's not a make it or break it, only because I don't think you have to necessarily formally have a structure that every week or every month or every quarter you're going to sit down and you're going to do like this formal process to figure out, is this thing still the thing that I want? I think so often, just naturally, as we take action, as we learn, as we make mistakes and mess up, as we encounter new environments and possibilities and people, naturally our course can sort of correct and shift as we learn and move through life. But if it is helpful for you to have a periodic checkpoint with yourself, do that. Experiment with it. See if that really does help you hone in maybe a little bit more on, okay, here's a milestone or here's a transition point. This is where I want to go next. How do I need to maybe show up a little bit differently? How do I need to tweak what I'm doing? That's all a possibility if you find that helpful as well. Okay, we're wrapping up, I think, with the makeup. I am going to try something a little different today, just for funsies, as I go through this next part of the video, which I wanted to talk about my own experience because, like I said, I've made a lot of mistakes when it comes to goal setting, making resolutions, etc., etc. I've also learned how to work with these principles and these tips that I'm giving you over time. And sometimes I still struggle. Often I still struggle around some of these things. So I'll share a little bit as I do this. Oh, by the way, this is the Makeup Forever Artist Color Pencil in Boundless Berry. I'm going to use this as a lip liner. I have no idea if it's going to look good. No clue. Actually, I'm not going to be able to talk while I do lip liner. What am I talking about? Let me take a second and finish this, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, that's the liner, and now I'm gonna go in with this Kulfi lip stain and we'll just see what it looks like. Okay, not bad. We'll call it good there. And I want to share, as we wrap up, like I said, a little example for me. So as I mentioned, athletics are in my background. I trained and competed in Olympic weightlifting. I've also trained and competed in one bodybuilding show. And my point is that I spent years across both of these sports training and knowing what it takes to have the right level of intensity to actually build muscle and build strength over time. And since leaving competitive athletics, strength training's kind of gone out the window for me. I mean, I was doing it here and there for a while, but I was taking a nice little break, and I've decided, notice decision, we'll get to the action, but I've decided that I wanted to incorporate strength training again, mostly because I just want it for longevity's sake, for my health's sake, and I want to feel strong again in my body. I've missed it. It's an activity that I've enjoyed. So my goal or resolution was to essentially incorporate it again, start training. I mean, it'd be nice, I would say, to get up to maybe 3 times a week. I am doing this for lifestyle. I'm doing this for health. I'm not doing this for competitive athletics anymore. So it'll look very different than when I was training 5-6 days a week in order to achieve a specific athletics goal. So I had all this in my head. I felt like I was doing really well because I was taking my own tips and I was saying, okay, so I'm going to take some of that pressure off. I'm going to start really slow. I'm going to not have too high expectation for what this is going to look like because I know that I'm detrained and it's been a while. And then I went to my first training session this week, coming back off the holidays and taking a break from really any sort of physical activity for a while, other than hiking in the woods, which was a lot of fun over the new year. And let me tell you, I was humbled. I was humbled because when I just took that first action, which for me, the first action was just go down to the fitness room in my apartment building and lift up some weight and put it down. That was it. It wasn't even specific to, well, this is the kind of exercise split that I'm going to do. No, it was simply just go and do something, because doing something is more than the doing nothing. I've done with this for a little while. And I'm sore. It's the next day and I am sore. And so we do the little experiment, right? I took the action, I saw what happened, what I experienced, and I make adjustments now. Instead of thinking that I'm going to do it X number of times a week, instead I'm shifting to a strategy and a plan, which is I'm going to listen to my body. If I have soreness, then I'm going to give my body a little bit of time to recover from that soreness. And then when I'm ready, I'll go train again. And don't get me wrong, I have that voice inside my head, just like a lot of people, that's constantly chirping and trying to remind me, oh, this isn't enough, this needs to be more. And I'm taking my own advice and saying, what is just the stupid, simple little action that I can take? Let me do that consistently for a while. So I remind myself of what this feels like. I remind myself of what it takes to create some sort of transformation with my body and my health intentionally. And I'm going to let that be enough. Maybe that's the last thing I add. Let any action initially that is helping move you in the direction that you want, what if you just let that be enough? And then you can get past that shame spiral in your head about how you're not doing enough or you're not doing well enough. Take that energy back from that mental swirl and invest it in just taking the next action then, and keep going, keep moving in this way. That's how I think we actually build sustainable change over time. Oh, and I have a puppy here who wants to make an appearance. Come here, baby. Oh, I've been recording and she's been walking around trying to, no, that's not for you. This is very expensive makeup, not for the baby. We're gonna put a lid on this. But yeah, she's been walking around trying to find something to get into. I'm pretty sure, I still have my Christmas tree up over here. And I'm pretty sure that she got something that fell off the tree. Hi, baby. Hi. Hi. What's so intriguing about mommy's face right now? Oh my God. Little babies. Oh, and she's starting to squirm. I don't know how long she'll last. So let's wrap it up. I think I've said, oh, it's just little babies, all that there is to say. I hope it was helpful. I hope that it, oh, okay. I'm gonna put you down. Okay, I hope it was helpful. I hope it gave you something to work with, to try, experiment with. I wish you the best with your New Year's resolutions and goals. As always, subscribe, like the video if you enjoy connecting, all the things that they say on YouTube, and I look forward to connecting again soon.